Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Chillin With The Villain podcast, the classic wrestling review podcast. We sit down, we chill out, and we watch some classic wrestling because wrestling was fun back in the day, right?
Well, it was indeed.
I guess we'll answer that today. I am the villain, Marty Skirl, a professional wrestler now of nearly 20 years. Oh my, where have the years gone? And my producer and co-host Sam is what we like to call a casual fan of wrestling. And when we say casual fan of wrestling, I think we mean he can watch wrestling and enjoy it, but he's not going to go spend every day talking about it online and booking the shows himself and everything else. And that's not a shot at anyone that does that, but Sam is what we like to call a casual fan. Or could we say jaded fan, Sam?
I think casual fan, because I'm kind of getting back into it now after the NXT AEW episode, remember?
Hey.
So maybe not so jaded. Casual, definitely. Like you said, I don't go around talking about wrestling too much, with the exception of the pay-per-view that we're covering today, which I talk about all the damn time.
Well, Sam, obviously, we're trying to not talk about current wrestling news on the podcast at the moment because so much stuff is happening so often. And, newsflash, this isn't live. We pre-record this, and sometimes we pre-record it. I'm shooting here maybe 5 days in advance or something. So we'll talk about something on the podcast, and then by the time the podcast hits, it's completely out of date and things have changed already.
And it keeps happening.
It keeps happening, but there has been a lot of wrestling news as of late. And something that may have, gone maybe unnoticed by some is the fact that Mick Foley has come out and said that he'd like to have one more retirement match. I think he said for his 60th birthday or, at the age of 60. And he wants to do a retirement match, or at least one more match, and it be a death match because he claims to be the king of the death match, which, funny enough, my pal Matt Cardona has been claiming to be for the last few years. So maybe that's a big matchup that we can expect to see soon. That being said, I thought it would be kind of fun for us to go on a story arc of Mick Foley's first retirement. So this is the first time in the podcast that we're doing something like this. We're going to cover 3 shows, and it's the story arc of Mick Foley's first retirement. So we're going to cover Royal Rumble 2000, which I'm sure you're all expecting if you've clicked on this. We're then going to review No Way Out 2000, and then we're going to finish the story arc with WrestleMania 2000. So I thought this would be a nice idea. Obviously, today we're doing the Royal Rumble, and we just came off a Royal Rumble, and we're in WrestleMania season. So we're looking at the WrestleMania season 24 years ago and seeing how it matches up, because I can speak for myself and possibly you, Sam. This may have been like the peak of my wrestling fandom, and I was so obsessed with wrestling in the year 2000. So it's going to be fun for us to go back and see how things hold up, or maybe they don't. Would you agree with that, Samuel?
Yes. And this week is Valentine's Day this week. And what do I love? What is my greatest love in the world? It's Royal Rumble 2000 and 2000's pay-per-views. So it's just the timing and everything is coming together just really nicely on this one. It's just the time is right.
Absolutely. And if you want to celebrate Valentine's Day with us, then you can start by giving us a review. A 5-star review would be very nice. And if you do, we will give you a shout out and read the review on the podcast. And I know we ask for this quite often, but it really does help us out with the algorithm. So, we don't charge for this podcast. We don't do anything like that. All we ask for is a nice 5-star review.
We just do it for the attention, don't we?
I don't know why we do it. Yeah. we do it for the people.
Oh man. Why are we doing this? Don't say it like that, man.
I tell you why we did it. We did it for The Rock. We did it for The Rock. Do you think Cody Rhodes would be saying that soon? Why'd you give up your WrestleMania match? I did it for The Rock.
Man, that's a story that we can't talk about because we'll be out of date by the time this goes live.
By the time this goes live, Cody's probably already won the title, or they've announced it's now Cody and Roman. So
so we can't say anything. All right, man. I've been very patient since we started this podcast. Right? Way back, 30 weeks ago? 32 weeks ago. So if you don't mind, I would love to just rip straight into Royal Rumble 2000. What'd you say?
Let's get to it.
Oh man, I can't wait. All right. The programming, and I really like this, the programming opens with one of my favorite and most memorable video packages of all time. It's a rare Royal Rumble pay-per-view opening video package that doesn't focus on the Royal Rumble, like the match, but instead it's all about the title match that's going to happen. And it's just pure emotion. It's a Triple H and Cactus Jack, like dual monologue. Now, I know that you like the video packages, especially the story-driven ones. You must have remembered these as well as I have for this match, this pay-per-view in particular. There's a couple of them.
Absolutely. And the I'll admit I'm not good with classical music or historic pieces. Obviously, for this, they used that very famous track for the soundtrack, but I could not tell you the name. Do you know what it is?
Oh yeah,
which is just such a dramatic and I don't know. Just I always love it actually when they do video packages and they use sort of famous classical pieces like this. I think it just adds so much drama. And honestly, everything around the build to the Cactus Jack and Triple H match, I think made it. And obviously, I mean, I guess we'll get to it, but it is in this video. The sort of the thing I think everyone remembers is Mankind taking off the mask, taking off the shirt.
Oh, we'll get there.
And he says, "I think you know the guy," and Triple H sells it big. And they covered that in this video. So this, I feel like in 2000 is when the WWE really started to get good at doing these video packages,
emotion driven ones.
Yes, absolutely. It just adds so much to the whole presentation, doesn't it?
I'm kind of surprised that AEW or WCW back in the day really didn't. Well, actually, maybe WCW was too early because, like you said, they really got good around like after 2000 or 2000 after, and WCW is kind of on the way up by then. But like, you'd think that that's one thing. If I was looking at WWE and like, what do I want to emulate? That would be one of the first things I'd try and rip off.
Well, I feel like I said 2000, but WWE were getting good at it actually. And like, even in 97, 98.
Okay.
That was I might have quoted this on the podcast before, but that was the famous line that Kevin Nash said that when he watched, they're like, "Oh, how did you know like WCW was going to lose the war? Or when did you feel it coming?" And he said he watched WrestleMania 14, I believe. Yeah, 14. And he said he watched the whole show and like nearly every match had like a really awesome video package where it told you who the characters were. It told you what, it got you up to date on the storyline and everything else. And it was just so well put together. And he was thinking, we don't have this at all in WCW. And he was like, oh, that's when I started to, see the kind of tide turning as such. And we talked about, we talked about that a lot on this podcast, how that was a big part of the WWF winning the war, and no one else really discusses that. People just say, "Oh, it was because of The Rock and Austin," and obviously, big part of it, but this as well. So, yeah, a great opening video for the Royal Rumble 2000 got me very nostalgic. I think.
Oh yeah.
One thing, just I feel like this pay-per-view is so nostalgic because this was the first pay-per-view to be shown on terrestrial TV in the United Kingdom. It was on Channel 4. And dude, I mean, I'm not looking for sympathy here, but growing up, I was like a poor kid. And I remember suggesting to my mother that we get Sky, which is cable in the UK. And my mother kind of laughed at that, like, ha, 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 like we could never have cable. So it was very difficult for me to watch wrestling as a youngster. And a lot of the ways I used to watch wrestling would just be through videos, VHSs. And I would ask people to tape Raw or tape the pay-per-views. And other than that, it was like buying the magazines and everything else. But I never had cable. So it was really annoying that I couldn't watch Raw or SmackDown. I had to either go to a friend's house or, like I said, get them to DVR it. Is that right? Or tape it?
Yep.
And
Tape it.
dude, I think they started showing. Yeah, I think this is the first pay-per-view they showed, and after this, they also picked up Sunday Night Heat on Channel 4. It would come on at like 1 a.m. on a Sunday night. And dude, I remember once, this is a really funny story actually. So a lot of the times I would try to stay up to 1 a.m. to watch Sunday Night Heat. This is how much of a wrestling fan I was, right? And I remember once I needed a way to stay up. So I started playing with my wrestling figures, and I got really into it, and I was having such a good time playing my figures. Then I was like, oh, it must be about time now for Sunday Night Heat to start. And I looked at the time, and it was like 2:30 in the morning, and I just missed watching the show, and I was devastated. I was like, no. But no, this was the first Rumble on Channel 4 in the UK. For the US listeners, Channel 4 is one of the big 4 channels that everyone in the country gets for free. So this was probably the peak of the WWF in the United Kingdom.
In the UK, at least, yeah.
Yes, like I know in the US, WWF got really big in 98, 99. In the UK, it felt like it got a lot bigger in the year 2000. And I remember going to school the next day after this, and every kid in school had watched this pay-per-view, and WWF was white hot, like big time. And I think they had a deal to show, I don't think it was every pay-per-view. It might have been like the big 4 pay-per-views, but WWF did something on this show which apparently soured Channel 4, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. But yeah, very nostalgic for Rumble 2000.
Yes, 2000. January 23rd, 2000, to be precise. Madison Square Garden, New York City, New York. This, Marty, was the 100th WWE pay-per-view. Did you know that?
I think I had heard that, yes. That's interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
I try and come with the trivia, but it's hard to get one that you don't know. I think actually the only trivia that I've got that you didn't know was that there was an imposter beyond the mat with Ken Shamrock in it.
Yeah.
I think it's the only thing I've told you that you didn't know.
All the time when you told me that Booker T hadn't been world champion.
Yes, I did tell you that, didn't I? Okay, it's a sold-out venue of 19,231 in attendance. And we'll get to the buy rate. But one thing, you talked about this being a nostalgic show. We have to stop and take a minute to talk about the arena ramp design thing. You know, it's iconic, yes. Dude, this is one of my favorites of all time. And I know nostalgia plays a big part of that. Obviously, No Mercy on the N64. Just, dude, this is a legendary one, right?
Was this not in WrestleMania 2000, the game?
I think it was in No Mercy.
Oh, was it? I would have thought it'd be too... Well, yeah, I remember being on the Nintendo either way. Well, the thing is with Madison Square Garden, because of the building setup, they can't do like these big-ass stages that they do
for right.
TVs and pay-per-views. And it's funny because for a lot of people, maybe it's kind of underwhelming, the lack of setup. But for me personally, I really enjoy like the smaller ramp, the smaller stage.
It has a more intimate feel to it.
I mean, we covered Survivor Series 2002. That was at Madison Square Garden as well, I believe. And they had like a small setup. But no, I really liked it. And obviously here they were going for some kind of like New York City theme.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a road with graffiti. And then we have the sort of famous yellow cab above the entrance. Pretty cool. Yeah, pretty nostalgic.
Really cool. Now, you mentioned the New York City thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like in the arena design or ramp design, not often is the location or city really is baked into the design of it. But it is here, and it's also married very nicely with the theme of the title match, the street fight. You know, it's like, because it's got the graffiti and the pallets, which they make use of, with the, like you said, the New York taxi cab bursting over the wall. So I just think it marries like the location, the street fight, just the design, the intimacy, just incredibly well. It's one of my favorites. Maybe we'll do a top 5 one day.
Yeah, we should. And, you know, I think a lot of the wrestling fans, miss these kind of unique setups for the pay-per-views, because Now
I certainly do.
they pretty much have the same, just big screen and big ramp. But back here in the year 2000 had some really awesome themes in terms of the setup and stuff. And they stopped doing it because, I guess, because of costs. And it's WWE, they're making more money than ever. And it seems like year on year, they're making more and more money. I mean, they just got paid, was it $5 million just for one show for Monday Night Raw? It's like, can't you just spend, I'm sure it's not cheap, but can you spend some thousands of dollars on some setups for the pay-per-views? Because now,
used to do it.
Right, the pay-per-views that happen now, they all kind of blur together in my head now. But back here, you can remember things. Do you know what I mean? Because of the unique setup.
How stand out they are. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's definitely something that I miss. And yeah, in 2000, they really rocked it. And like I said, the whole New York sort of street, like Foley and Triple H are fighting on the streets of New York City. It's pretty cool.
Pretty cool. Can you guess the buy rate, though?
It's going to be a really big one.
It is.
Year 2000. This was a pretty big ass show. I'm going to guess that it was probably over 500. I'm going to guess 5. I'm pretty sure it was a lot. Maybe 5. I'm going to say 565.
Go up.
Okay. 590.
590. There you go, man.
Oh, wow.
500. Yeah, well done. 590,000. That's just the buy rate. I also feel like everyone and their mum had this on DVD as well. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's just what I think. So this must have made a lot of money for WWE overall.
Yeah, it must have done. And I wonder how much Channel 4 paid for this pay-per-view as well.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. Damn. Okay. So our first match, Marty, rings out with the beautiful sound of Olympian pageantry as our Olympic king, Kurt Angle, makes his way to the ring. And I'm pretty sure he was only in the WWE for a couple of months by this point, like maybe November 1999 or October 1999.
I think he debuted just before Survivor Series 99, I want to say.
When was that? That would be
around like Thanksgiving time.
Yeah. Okay. So November. So yeah. And it's just crazy how good he is on the mic already, just riling up the crowd to no end. The crowd goes nuts, by the way, for the mystery opponent. And they're already chanting his name when Kurt's on the mic. It's Tazz, who wears Kurt Angle like a glove and puts him to sleep via Tazz-mission in 3 minutes and 16 seconds. And I know we've talked about what went wrong with Tazz in the WWE at a later date and his outfit and everything, but what an excellent debut for Tazz, right?
It certainly was a good debut for Tazz. I find the whole thing kind of odd, but I guess I'll get to that in a second. Watching this, so the crowd seemed to know that Tazz was going to debut, right? Like there's signs in the crowd saying Tazz, and pretty much the whole audience is chanting, "We want Tazz, we want Tazz." And I didn't know at the time that Tazz was debuting. And when I was watching this, I thought, how did the crowd know? And I just assumed, like, I guess they'd all just read the dirt sheets and stuff. But I thought, like, I know New York is a smart crowd and Madison Square Garden is probably like the smartest crowd out there. But I thought in the year 2000, especially early 2000, I thought, if all these people reading the sheets, to me, it didn't really make sense. So I started doing a little research, and I guess they had actually, WWF that is, done kind of vignettes for Tazz. So what they did is in the lead up to the Rumble, when different wrestlers, typically from the mid-card, guys like Al Snow, would do their entrance, during their entrance, Tazz's logo, or the logo they created for him, would like pop up on the screen, like the big orange sort of tribal, almost like a tribal tattoo logo.
Yeah, with the 13 in it.
Right, but it would be without the 13 for.
Gotcha.
Right, because I guess that would be a dead giveaway. But they would come up during people's entrances, and I guess the majority of the audience, they must have known it was Tazz from that. So I thought that was pretty cool. But like you do wonder, you think like how popular was ECW, and how many of the fans really knew about it. But apparently in Madison Square Garden, they all kind of knew about ECW because they all knew who he was and they popped big for him.
Super excited for him.
And the reason why I say this is odd, I mean, I think this is obviously the highlight of Tazz's
career, right?
run.
WWE.
Well, maybe career, yes. But it's very odd that just knowing where both wrestlers went on from this, so Kurt Angle went on to, I think I want to say like 8 or 9 months later, Kurt Angle's the world champion and Tazz is doing like nothing, like doing jobs to Jerry Lawler. So it's kind of odd. And at this point, Kurt Angle was undefeated, right?
Yep.
So it was very odd that I don't know if they had big plans for Tazz or they just felt like they needed to get Kurt Angle's loss out the way with, but they really, really put Tazz over here. And I was wondering, like, who was a fan of Tazz? Like, who signed Tazz? Because clearly he doesn't seem like someone that Vince McMahon would like. And I looked at it and it was Jim Ross. And what's interesting is, so Tazz wanted to leave ECW and he actually had offers from both, or at least was talking to both WWF and WCW. And Tazz ultimately picked the WWF. And I want to say at the similar time, Mike Awesome, he left ECW and he went to WCW. And I do think it's quite fun to think what it would have been like if it was the other way around, if Tazz would have went to WCW and Mike Awesome came to the WWF in the year 2000 or early 2000. I feel like if Tazz went to WCW, they probably would have put him in the cruiserweight division, and that actually might have been all right for him. But at the same time, WCW in 2000 is just like a whole nother thing. But they had him come out and he pretty much ran through Kurt Angle. And I guess Vince saw him because I assume Vince probably never even actually seen Tazz before this. Maybe he had, I don't know. But I'm going to assume that Tazz saw him and thought, well, he looks small. And all these suplexes that Tazz was doing, these weren't commonplace in the WWF in the year 2000, like whatsoever. And I think to someone like Vince, I mean, we watched Beyond the Mat last week, and someone, when you saw Vince watching the Mike Modest tryout match, and he did like a fisherman's brain buster, and you saw Vince sell it big, like, oh, like that needs some work. So watching Tazz throw around Kurt Angle, this talent that they'd invested a lot in and had a lot of high hopes for. And at one point, Tazz goes to do like a German suplex, and the timing's a little off with Angle when it almost looks like he's going to land on his head. Fortunately, he didn't. But I think the top stars saw this, Vince saw this, and they thought, okay, this guy, he comes out and he suplexes people on their heads, which he did do in ECW. We can't do that here. And I feel like that might have been the death of him. Tazz has said in interviews that because he got such a big pop when he came out, he thought that he was like dead on arrival because he thought, oh no, I'm already over. And the WWE didn't create this idea. So they're going to hate the fact that I was over from the get-go without their help. But I think that's him being paranoid. I don't think he would have got heat for having a really big pop. I don't think that whatsoever. But no, it was a really fun way. But honestly, watching this, I feel like we've been harsh on Tazz to a degree. But I'm going to say this is how I feel. I feel like Kurt Angle came across like the star here. He's doing the job. He's getting his ass kicked. But like the whole time I find myself watching Kurt, not watching Tazz. I'm watching Kurt get beaten up and he's so good at doing it. And I also liked how they did the Tazz mission for the finish. And then that was kind of like a point of contention. Like, is that a legal hold? Was it a sleep or was it a choke? I thought that was kind of a cool way. And to be honest with you, I felt like that kind of gave Tazz this kind of dangerous feeling. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, legitimacy, or like he's dangerous, so he'll do something against the rules or whatnot. So I thought that was a cool way. And obviously that gave Kurt Angle an out on his promo because I mean, I guess you're going to get to it after this. I just thought it was so brilliant. He's getting checked on by the doctors. And he says,
EMT's like shining the flashlight in his eyes to make sure he's not concussed.
Yes. And he said, well, he choked me out, right? That's not legal. So I'm still undefeated, which I just thought was absolutely great.
Dude, it's so good. Like, he's so good. Like, the EMT just wants to focus on his job. He doesn't care who wins or loses as long as like everyone's safe. And like Kurt Angle, he's so arrogant. He's just trying to like convince anyone who will listen that he's still undefeated.
Yes. And
it's just perfect character work. And this pay-per-view, I know I'm very, very easygoing on this pay-per-view, very kind to it, but is absolutely littered with these little gems throughout.
And honestly, that this scene with Kurt Angle and the EMT, I thought he was fantastic. Typically, they have someone and it's like clearly an indie worker and they're doing bad acting. I feel like this might have been a real doctor because he did it perfectly. I thought it was a really, really good angle and just
Me too.
yeah. But you know, what could have been with Tazz? I also, again, I feel like I'm being harsh on Tazz. When I was watching him here, he didn't really look in that great a shape here. Certainly not compared to what he was in ECW. So
no.
And I feel like that would have been the writing on the wall for Vince McMahon if he was short and wasn't in great shape, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, great performance from Kurt Angle, fun for Tazz, and it was definitely fun for the crowd. And yeah, just this match just says to me like how much presence ECW had, at least in New York.
Yeah. I think this is my favorite debut.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
I do. I think it's a great match. I really like it. Anyways, we shouldn't waste any more time because the show wastes no time in getting to an absolute banger next, man. Allegedly, the inaugural tag team tables match. Was it though? I don't know, but I just feel like that must have happened before. Anyways, it's the Hardy Boys. They table the Dudley Boys and win in just over 10 minutes in this absolutely deadly looking but amazing tag team table match, man. Love it. I love this one.
So, yes, I'm actually going to surprise you. Before this match, I just thought it's worth noting it was pretty funny. They have a backstage interview with the Hardy Boys, and they're there with Terry Runnels, which, you know, I think most people probably forget the short run where Terry was with the Hardy Boys, and the Hardy Boys had won her managerial services in a TIT ladder match, a Terry Invitational, Terry Invitational tournament, I guess. So that spelt tit. There's a lot of Vince Russo doing this stuff. We're going to see BB later, which stands for Big Boobs. And, you know, he did a lot of this stuff. He came up with the name TNA. He came up with the group in TNA called Sports Entertainment Extreme, which spells out sex. This sounds like stuff I would have come up with when I was 10 years old.
Yeah, I know, dude.
But it's, dude, this is really funny. Terry Runnels tries to cut a promo where she's like, yeah, we're going to go out there tonight and we're going to beat the Dudley Boys. And then Jeff is obviously very charismatic, but at this point in early 2000 wasn't convincing with his promos. And he tells Terry Runnels off. He's like, no, Terry, no, you can't go out there tonight. It's too extreme. You don't get it. You got to stay back here. And I'm like, why is he telling her off for? It seemed a bit out of place. But trying to put over how dangerous this tables match would be. I think with this Royal Rumble, a lot of people, obviously the street fight is what people's heads go to, but I also think people think of this match. This was at least the first ever tables match or tag team. I think it was the first ever tables match, full stop, in the WWF. I think they've done some previously in ECW. I'm going to surprise you. I'm not a big fan of these sort of gimmick matches. You know, I know you love them.
I know you're not.
I will go on record and say I think this is probably the best tables match of all time. And the reason why I'm going to say that is this. Throughout the whole entire match, the whole entire time, both teams are trying to put each other through tables from start to finish, right? Just like when I watch a ladder match, I want to see the guys constantly trying to get the belt. And here, they're constantly trying to put each other through tables, and they do so many really cool and like clever spots where they're about to put someone through a table, then they'll slide the table out the way or move the table out the way. And the timing on some of these is just incredible. I think at one point, Bubba gave a backdrop to Jeff, I want to say, and the table's right there. And Matt Hardy comes in last second and pushes the table out the way. And he pushes it like up. And it could have been so dangerous if the timing was like a second off and they pulled it off beautifully. So the rules, I think, they got a little complicated at one point, because the idea is that, you know, you have to put your opponent through the table.
Be an offensive move.
But then also, I'm pretty sure they, at one point, like, once you've been eliminated, maybe you can't put someone through a table. I don't really know, because at one point, Bubba put someone through a table, and the referee saying, no, it doesn't count, but it did count. But either way, a bunch of guys go through tables here. Matt Hardy tries to leg drop. He goes for a table. Jeff tries to do like a flip out of the ring, and he goes for a table that's lent up on the barricade.
Oh, God, yeah.
A bunch of these crazy spots. There's a beautiful moment where Matt Hardy brought a ladder out, which I didn't really like. So there was ladders in this match and there was chairs in this match. We'll get to the chairs in a second. But to me personally, I don't think in a tables match you should have any other gimmicks, right? Let it be a tables match. And
I'm with you on that.
I don't like the idea of, it's a tables match, so it's also no disqualification. I'm like, no, I think you should be disqualified. I know, like, obviously you want to see someone go for a table, but to me, it should just be, it's a normal match, but to win, you have to put your opponent for a table. I don't think it should be, you can use anything you want. That's just me personally. But
what did you think, though, about, I know you don't want any other weapons involved, but what do you think about all of the kind of creative uses that the teams were coming up with using the stairs to make makeshift like platforms for the tables and stuff? I don't think I've ever seen that really since.
No, I thought it was very creative. It's funny because I was thinking about this watching this. I don't know if you would have really seen them, but the Dudley Boys, it feels like they kind of stole their gimmick from the Public Enemy, who were in ECW. They had a short run in WCW and a very short run in the WWF, where I think they got into a fight with the Dudley Boys, funny enough. But it was them, the Public Enemy, that originally came out as a tag team with tables, and they were putting people through tables. They were tabling them, as you like to put it. And I guess the Dudley Boys kind of picked this up. And I can't really remember if the Dudley Boys did this in ECW. I'm sure they did, but I think when they came to the WWF, they made it more of a thing where like the table was their gimmick. But they did a whole bunch of creative stuff. The biggest takeaway, I think, dude, the amount of unprotected steel chair headshots that were just done as transitions, like not even, they were just to set up something else. They weren't like, oh, this is the finish of the match, I'm just gonna smash your brains out with a chair. It was just like in between spots to get Bubba on a table, just clock him over the head
as hard as possible.
And there were so many chair shots unprotected in this match and just on this show as a whole. But like I can't remember which one it was, but towards the end, there's like a few chair shots to the head that don't even get a reaction from the crowd.
I know,
and it's like so you've done them so much where they're not even getting a pop anymore. Just ridiculous. And you do look now and you think, like, obviously Jeff has had he's had his troubles over the years, and he obviously did a lot of crazy things, but I'm sure these chair shots just did not help whatsoever. So that was very difficult to watch. So we say that every time we see that. It's just so unbelievable how commonplace they were back then, just knowing what we know now. But
this is definitely what we call a time capsule pay-per-view, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say so.
And we'll definitely get onto that very soon.
There's a lot of things in the year 2000. A lot of unprotected steel chair headshots, a lot of low blows. Low blow was a thing at the time. But no, overall, they did some really cool things. Bubba fell from the balcony through some tables. And it's funny because I think they set up like either 3 or 4 tables and Bubba fell through them. And then there was one table unsmashed, which then Matt put, I guess, either Bubba or Devon, I guess Devon on, and Jeff did the swanton off the balcony for it. And I was thinking,
what if that broke? Yeah.
Well, I guess the idea, I guess they assumed it was going to break and they were going to get another table. But it's like, there's one there already, so we use that. But this definitely made the Dudley Boys at the time, I want to say, and I think it helped make the Hardyz. Like the Hardyz, people will say they got made in the ladder match they had with Edge and Christian, which I agree with, but I think here kind of really cemented it. And it just, we see the new Age Outlaws later, but this time period, it led into the Dudley Boys, the Hardy Boys, and Edge and Christian just stealing the tag team wrestling scene. And this, as a youngster, I would have been 11 years old when this happened. I thought this was
how hot was this?
The coolest thing ever at the time. Just loved it.
We're talking about this pay-per-view being littered with all these little gems and loads of nostalgia. And there's parts of this pay-per-view throughout where I just have these scenes like melted into my brain. And one of them is that shot of Jeff when he takes his shirt off and he's up high. You know the one I'm talking about. The camera is behind him. Yeah,
he does the sexy time.
Yes, he does. And you see the taxi in the background. It's just like such a memorable pay-per-view moment for me. And it's just like one little camera angle in like for 3 seconds in an entire 3 hour pay-per-view. But I was wondering, do you remember that vividly, or is that just me being weird?
No, the reason why you remember it is because I think the WWE showed it for so many more times in video packages and everything else.
Yeah, okay.
There's stuff like that in wrestling, moments that happen that they just kind of
add to
replay. I wouldn't be surprised. I could be wrong, but I would be shocked if this was in one of the don't try this at home videos. That would make sense, right? But I'm sure they replayed it a bunch of times.
Another one is like when Matt carries Jeff's broken body to the ring, the way he rolls him over the crowd barrier, like he's a sleeping bag, and he just like crumples. There's another one that's stuck in my memory as well, but I doubt they'll be playing that in any video packages, maybe not video packages in the future.
Well, dude, there's one point where Devon, they're climbing a ladder, I want to say with Matt, and Devon kind of falls off and like smashes a fan in the face.
Oh my God.
With it being at MSG, the crowd is like super close, and at some points they don't even have barriers there. They just have security guards like
holding them. Yeah,
you would not see that in this day and age whatsoever.
No, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I noticed that. I've always noticed that before, even when I watched it as a kid. I was like, oh, I wonder if they get in trouble for that. But what I noticed this time round is that fan kind of like gets knocked out in a daze, and he hits the ground, and his friends like patting him on the head as a joke. Then I think it was Bubba who gets tabled, so gets eliminated, and then the fan like comes to. So that fan would have like missed such an important part of the match. Like he was out cold, and while in that short amount of time they was out cold, somebody got eliminated.
Surely he didn't get knocked out, the fan, right? That would have been horrendous.
He fell to the ground. He fainted. It's I don't know. I didn't know if it was real or not.
So what's funny is maybe I need to watch it again. Maybe it was a plant. I doubt that though. Typically when something like that, maybe not this extreme, but something with a fan would happen, let's say someone got ran into the barricade and it kind of knocked someone's knees, they would bring them backstage and, I'll get a picture with Goldust or whatever and give them a free t-shirt or two. When it's funny because if the person had money, they could sue the company for a lot, millions probably, but it's just obviously, the majority of people can't afford to try and sue the WWE. You didn't mention this is the second match with a cheap heat pre-match promo. Kurt Angle.
I haven't mentioned these because I have no idea who they're referring to.
So what's interesting? So Kurt Angle came out and ripped on New York and ripped on the sports teams. Then Bubba came out and ripped on New York as well. And Bubba's from New York. And like Bubba Ray Dudley is like the most New York person ever. So I don't know why he was ripping on New York. But he used the name John Rocker to try and get heat. And it got a bunch of boos. And I was wondering, like, who's John Rocker? And I guess at the time, John Rocker had got in trouble because he'd done some interviews where he was saying kind of like a bunch of like borderline racist stuff, it seemed. Like he was saying how he hated New York, and he said, you go down Times Square and no one there even will speak English. It will be people from like Asians and whatever else. And said some really racist stuff, it seems. That's what I was reading. And Bubba was using him to get heat in his promo. I thought that was pretty bizarre. But no, overall, really, really good match. The other thing I did think of is it felt like a lot of ECW presence on this show. And I do wonder how the Hardy Boys never ended up in ECW before the WWE, the WWF. You seemed like they would have been perfect fit,
yeah.
Because I think they signed with the WWF. They've been doing jobs for years, but I think they signed officially maybe in 98. And it just seems like, 95, 96, 97. It's bizarre how they managed to not end up in ECW because they would have fit it perfectly. And it seems like they probably actually took a lot of inspiration from ECW. I don't know that to be true. Next time I see Matt Hardy, I'm going to ask him about it. It might be a while till I see him, but maybe at a signing or a convention, I'll ask him about it because I was thinking about that quite a lot during this match. But no, overall, really, really great match. And it's, it's set up for what we're about to get, which not so great. So,
okay. Yeah. Okay. So again, I love this pay-per-view, but so we now have what we shall call an intermission of sorts, a break from the regular scheduled programming that you may have expected to see if you just wanted to tune in on Channel 4 to watch some wrestling in what's called the Miss Royal Rumble 2000 swimsuit contest, where Andy Richter from the Conan O'Brien show,
Yes.
Sergeant Slaughter,
Yes.
Freddie Blassie, who, by the way, the crowd went nuts for.
The crowd popped big for
didn't they? Yeah, that was
they
great.
did.
That was great. Two people that I had to look up. So Tony Garea and
Yes.
Johnny Valiant. I assume you know who they are.
Well, it's funny because Johnny Valiant, from the Valiant Brothers, he comes out and for some reason they just call him Johnny V. It's like, what? It's really bizarre. Yeah. And what a way, just like these legends, especially of, legends of the New York wrestling scene from back in the 70s and what, the 80s. And this is the way they're using it to host a bikini contest. It's like, ugh.
And
randomly,
Fabulous
Andy
Moolah as well. And Fabulous Moolah, another legend. Yeah.
Yes.
And they are a panel of judges, like you hinted at, who have to vote on who has the best swimsuit or underwear or physique, I guess, out of Ivory, Jacqueline, Terry Runnels, BB, who we just talked about, Luna, and the Cat, with, of course, Jerry Lawler is emceeing something like this, right? And you may be thinking, this is a great segment and in no way tasteless waste of time, right? Well, it's actually about to get even better than how I made it sound, because we have such a hilarious bit, dude. I was in stitches, weren't you? Mae Young invites herself to be a competitor who, I don't know how to say it, it's like gets her tits out and is voted unanimously the winner, okay? Now, Marty, before we hit record, you said that this was your favorite bit. What did you mean by that?
Dude. Well, we should also say, just for context, Mae Young, how old is she here? Like 80 something?
80 something, yeah.
Yes. I'm not a big fan of these segments. They try to make it entertaining. The idea is he wants some entertainment during the wrestling or during the sports entertainment. And with the demographic of their main audience being males aged 18 to 49, they figured the crowd would enjoy this. Ivory comes out, she's wearing a fleece over the top of herself, and she doesn't want to be involved in it, which actually kind of showed sort of early signs of that right to censor Ivory. I thought that was kind of cool, but she doesn't want to be a part of it. But then she takes off her fleece and she's, but then she has a very revealing swimsuit. There was BB there who, again, you could, forget her quite easily. There was Jacqueline, Terry Runnels, and then Luna, who refused to basically take her robe off, which is funny because she had like a very revealing, you could see it on her, very
it was
revealing
see-through.
swimsuit. And then she had a see-through robe. It was like kind of funny. Then the Cat, the big pop is, like no pun intended, because the big pop was that she was wearing a bubble wrap swimsuit or bikini. Yes. And Jerry Lawler's really selling it at the time. He was engaged to the Cat. I personally was never really a fan of the Cat, and I really understand the appeal. But yes, of course, Mae Young comes out and does her thing. They play the music, and she exposes and shows her, I guess, tits, as we call it in the UK. For the Channel 4 viewing, they censored it, and I'm not sure what they did on pay-per-view in America. I do remember at the time hearing the rumor that they used like what's the right word, prosthetics over
prosthetics, like
I don't, but I was looking, there didn't seem to be.
No, I'm pretty sure no.
So I don't know if she just got, maybe I assume at the very least she probably had like nipple. Yes, and Mark Henry comes out and covers up. But yeah, even as a young lad, so like I said, I would have been 11 years old when this happened. I thought this was crap, and it kind of made me a little bit embarrassed at the time to be a wrestling fan, because I was looking forward to going to school the next day and everyone tell me what they thought WrestleMania. But this was the kind of thing that would happen in the WWF at the time that like people at school would rip on me for enjoying. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I kind of get they're trying to do they're trying to make it funny. They're trying to make it shocking. For me, I don't know. It just something, it doesn't age well, but I say it doesn't age well. I don't think it was that great at the time either.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah, not for me, I'm afraid. And it's pretty crazy to see how far we've come with all this stuff. I think it was last year's WrestleMania. My favorite match the whole weekend was Charlotte against Rhea Ripley. It was fantastic, brilliant. and they were one of the title matches at WrestleMania. And yeah, to look back here in the year 2000, when this is what they're doing, you got Ivory there and Jacqueline, who both done their craft around the world wrestling. Then they come here and it's just like, yeah, you're going to get in great shape because you're going to be in bikinis, and these bikinis they're wearing, very, very revealing. It's kind of cringe to watch it back, right?
Yeah, it was. Is this the part that you said Channel 4 got upset with? I know they had to censor it, but is this the part what they had?
Yeah, I think it soured the deal. I think from the get-go, and then obviously because it didn't last, the deal with Channel 4, I think it only lasted a year or two, maybe longer. I might be wrong, but I heard that Channel 4 weren't happy about it at all, and I'm pretty sure Channel 4 shows some funny stuff. So, but an 80-year-old woman doing, I don't know, it just. Yeah. So we can move on from this.
Yes. Right. Next, we have an intergender triple threat next, with not a lot to it, to be honest, but Chris Jericho pins Chyna to defeat her and Hardcore Holly for the IC championship in just over 7 minutes. Now, what's the first thing I noticed was during the entrances, only Chris Jericho comes out to any sort of noise at all. But Madison Square Jericho doesn't really have a ring to it, does it, mate?
Yeah, that was stretching a little bit. This match is for the IC Championship, but at the time, Jericho and Chyna were the co-holders of the Intercontinental Championship. The first time I think it'd ever been done where two people were the champion. And I guess what happened was there was some kind of IC match, which was a three-way, I want to say, and both Chyna and Jericho pinned the same person. And so Stephanie McMahon said, okay, you're both the Intercontinental Champion. So kind of a weird storyline from the get-go. And you'd think that would make them be like, okay, let's have Chyna versus Jericho to find out who is the undisputed Intercontinental Champion. But for some reason, they throw Hardcore Holly into the
I know, dude.
Right? It's funny, you read Jericho's book and he talks about working with Chyna and just how he was not pleased at all when he got asked to work with Chyna, because he was hoping to, do some really big things in the company. He thought working with Chyna would be kind of not good for him. What is really interesting is the original artwork for WrestleMania 2000 was, I want to say, The Rock, Triple H, I want to say Mick Foley and Jericho. Not Big Show. It was either not Big Show or not Mick Foley, but Jericho was in the original artwork. So everyone assumed that Jericho, they were going to try and push Jericho to be in that main event four-way at WrestleMania. And I guess things changed because for whatever reason, the WWE didn't think Jericho was that great at the time. Jericho comes out, like you said, gets a huge pop. And the audience is full of signs of Jericho and Y2J and Jerichoholics, everything else. This is the Royal Rumble. The WrestleMania is still, quite a few months away. I feel like they could have put Jericho in that main event because he was over as hell here. People were excited for something new. At this point, I feel like Chyna was just not as over as she had been previously. I think the thing, like when Chyna started wrestling more, she started to get a lot more exposed. When she was just a bodyguard for Triple H, and every now and then she would forearm someone or body slam someone or suplex, whatever, super duper cool. But when she's here trying to do full-on competitive matches, she wasn't that great in the ring. And I feel like it kind of killed the mystique of Chyna. And this is the problem what WWE ran into with Chyna. Once they started having her wrestle men, they didn't really know where to go from there, So, but yeah, having Hardcore Holly in the mix of this is pretty,
it's bizarre, right?
But Hardcore Holly is looking completely jacked here, right?
Dude, he was massive, man.
This match where I think Hardcore Holly gets hit in the head with a steel chair and the crowd doesn't even react. But yeah, really kind of odd match. It's funny, Hardcore Holly, was it one of the Royal Rumbles, maybe 2003? He has a world title match against Brock Lesnar at the Royal Rumble. It's like, how did this happen?
How did this?
So he just worms his way in sometimes into these title matches at the Royal Rumble. But yeah, it was cool to see Jericho. And we're talking about Chyna. And they, like I said, they had her win the Intercontinental title. They had her enter King of the Ring. They had her enter the Royal Rumble in '99 and also tonight. And I guess from there, they didn't really know where to go with her. but Vince Russo was a massive fan of hers. And
Yeah.
there was rumors or ideas, I guess, floating around in WWF Creative at one point, the discussion of putting the World Heavyweight Championship on China. And I can believe that as well, because obviously, well, Russo put the world title on David Arquette. So I could see him putting on China. And I think it would have been something that would have fit in with the attitude and doing this kind of shock sort of storylines. I guess someone shut it down. And to be honest with you, I don't think people wanted to see China versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, for example.
No.
But it did get me thinking. On this show, there was a lot of mid-carders, especially in the Rumble. And here we've got China, who I'd say was a mid-carder, and Hark Holly, definitely. Jericho here, he's a mid-carder trying to climb his way up. Yeah, trying to climb his way up the cards. And so China was never world champion. And it got me thinking, who are our favorite mid-carders that we would have loved to have seen have a main event run? So Sam, you know what time it is. It's time for that top 5. So this is our top 5 mid-carders who we wish would have got a main event run. So that's a very important part of it. So
yes,
because if it's favorite mid-carders, then I could go on all day and I could say I loved Tajiri. But do I think he should have been wrestling for the world title at pay-per-views? I would have liked to have seen it, but probably not.
Right.
So please bear that in mind, guys. Also, this is not that like who should have been world champion. So for me, guys like Mr. Perfect, Owen Hart, Razor Ramon, I haven't put them in my list because even though I would have loved to have seen them do, be world champions or be in the main events, they were still upper mid-carders, I think. I'm talking like mid-card.
Right.
Right. So I'll go through mine. So number 5, the reason he's number 5 is because he kind of did a few main events, but I would still consider him probably a mid-carder. My number 5, I'm going with a fellow British man, my father, actually, Wade Barrett.
Oh, that's a good one.
I thought that was a good one because
well done.
Dude, so I met Wade Barrett, his real name's Stu, back when we first started. We started out together. So I would have been 14 years old when I first met Stu. And as soon as he walked in the building, we were like, whoa, like this guy's going to be something. Do you know what's funny about Stu? I don't know if I should reveal this on the podcast. I don't know if anyone knows this, but when I first met him, he had a big tattoo on his arm. Guess what the tattoo was?
Naked lady.
No, it was Goldberg's tattoo on his arm.
Was it really?
Yeah. It's like, obviously he got that covered up at some point, but we all thought he was going to be a big star. And then obviously there's been this whole thing where there's never been or at least I guess Drew now, but there's never been a British world champion. And there still hasn't been an English world champion. So when Wade Barrett turned up in WWF, we all wanted him to do well. And unfortunately, it didn't really work out for him. He did do a main event, I want to say, with maybe Cena, but yeah, typically a mid-carder. So my number 5, good old Wade Barrett. My number 4, MVP. Now,
dude,
it's a good one. Huh? I thought about this.
You've really thought about these, haven't you, man?
So MVP, you could consider him upper mid-card, but then I can't really think of any times he actually did main events unless it was like maybe a Survivor Series match or something. But MVP, the presentation when they first brought him in was just really, really cool. And he just has charisma coming out of him. Like they debuted him and said he was like the highest paid SmackDown superstar, which just instantly made him seem big time and important. Yeah. Really good on the mic. It took him a while to get good in the ring, which makes a lot of sense. But I'm surprised, built guy as well. I'm surprised someone with the look and the verbal skills and everything else of MVP didn't get pushed more than he did. I don't know what happened there. I'm pretty good pals with MVP, so if I ever see him again, then I'll definitely ask about it. But he was at that US title level and never really seemed to crack that. So, and you wonder why, and there could have been a whole bunch of different reasons. That's the thing with this as well. It's a lot of this stuff. It's like there was, these guys could have been world champions, but there was just something that happened, and that's very apparent for my number 2 because my number 2, we've discussed him on the show a few times, Sean O'Hare. Yes. So we discussed Sean O'Hare on the show before, and a few weeks or so ago, maybe a month ago now, we had Mark Jindrak on the show, who's another guy which we would have liked to have seen had a main event run, but he did not make the list. But Sean O'Hare, he had all the tools in the world, it seemed, to have a big main event run, and he just looked like an absolute beast. It would have been amazing to see him at the top, but things got in the way, which they often do with wrestlers, and his demons got, in the way. So it's kind of like, what can you do? I don't think we can blame WWE for this one. So in a different world, it could have been different, and I think that would have been awesome. And actually, I just got a new pair of trunks today, and they're actually Sean O'Hare inspired. They have spider webs on them, which Sean O'Hare used to have. So my little tribute to Sean O'Hare. And my number 1 mid-carder that I would have liked to have seen have a main event run, Brian Pillman. And I think what's sad about this is, had the accident not happened, had he not passed away, I'm pretty sure we would have.
It would have been the
main event run.
Yeah.
And we would have got that big match with Stone Cold Steve Austin. Unfortunately, because of events, we did not get that. But yes, Brian Pillman, it's just such a shame. Like, before he had that, was it a car accident or a motorbike accident? It seemed like he was in the prime of his career in terms of his character work, was just off the charts. And he just looked like such a badass. And awesome. Like, to think about Brian Pillman in the year 1998, the 99, 2000, and the loose cannon gimmick would have worked so well.
Oh, hell yeah. For the Attitude Era.
So well. Just a real, I think about that a lot. Just like, man, like, I wish, he didn't leave us. And yeah. And I think it's fair to say, really, that he was always kind of in the mid card. So I thought he fit perfectly to be my number 1.
That is excellent. You have outdone yourself with this list this week, my man. Very good list.
I do have other people on, like, I guess my honorable mentions. There's a few that I thought Sam's going to mention, so I won't mention. But I've mentioned before, Conan. Like, I would like to see Conan. Obviously, he had main evented in Mexico all the time, but in WCW or TNA would have been nice. Bam Bam Bigelow, but he did do a few main events, so I don't know if you call him mid-card. Obviously, like, Test is another one I thought about, because in the show, he's super duper over. But it's like, was he on par with the top guys at the time? Maybe not. And like I said before about guys like Owen Hart, like X-Pac I loved. I think it would have been cool to see him do at least a few main events, but realistically, they probably weren't going to have him carrying the company. So there's a whole bunch of guys. But the obvious one actually that I left for you is Ken Shamrock. And I think it's obvious, had he stayed with the company, obviously he got the MMA bug and wanted to go back and fight. Had he stayed with the company, you got to believe that he would have got that big main event run eventually. And it would have been really cool to see. He did get to main event TNA, but not WWE. And obviously, how much we love our Ken Shamrock. And yeah, it's a shame to say, I guess he was a mid-carder really in the WWE.
Yeah, well, don't worry, Ken Shamrock fans. I'm not talking about you and me. I mean, everybody else. I've got you covered in my top 5 with your Ken Shamrock content. But you're right. Like, favorite main eventers and favorite main eventers who you feel like really should have deserved like main title shot or a run are two very different things. So, for example, I do not have IRS in here, despite him being so, one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. And that's because I feel like exactly where he was is absolutely perfect for him and his character. And I think it would have been a detriment to him for them to have pushed him. I think where he was and just like the legacy that he had is perfect for him. So he's not even, I haven't even thought of him for this list, but yeah, I'm warning you now. My top 5 isn't as good as yours, but we'll go ahead and do it. So number 5, I've got Zack Ryder.
Yeah, well, and because I didn't mention during mine actually, but I did say to you before, we should mention like when we think they should have the main event run. And clearly with Zack Ryder, when he got himself over with that YouTube show, and they did push him to a degree where he won the US title, but they didn't go all the way. And eventually,
I feel like he could have went all the way.
I think if they did, Zack Ryder at that time have a world title match pay-per-view, I think
a lot of people would have got behind it.
I think 100% people would have got behind it, but I think it actually would have done pretty good pay-per-view buys because the intrigue there, and I think the match, no matter who he wrestled, would have probably been incredible because people would have been so behind Zack Ryder. He was so over at one point. He was over to the one point where The Rock's cutting a promo in Madison Square Garden, and the crowd is chanting Zack Ryder, who wasn't even booked for the show. Do you know what I mean? Like, he was over. That's actually a great shout. No, you said your list wasn't as good as mine, but that's a great shout.
They get worse from here. Because number 5, I've got Steve Blackman. I mean, number 4, I've got Steve Blackman. But no, here's the thing. I know he's become like not a joke, but in this podcast, at least, we always bring him up, and same for Ken Shamrock. Spoiler, he's number 3. But if you think about so many memorable moments, like Shane McMahon falling off the Titantron, right? These sort of things. Well, Steve Blackman was there. You know, people forget, actually, Steve Blackman also did a guillotine leg drop, which is probably a worse thing to do off the Titantron than land on your back, is to land on your tailbone, right? And he's just physically, and I mean that in regards to his like tone and his physique and his muscles, but also his actual look, like his clean look, his skill level, and the fact that he has that, what's the term, Marty? He's got that kind of ferocity, you know, like that kind of animal kind of thing.
Yeah.
I feel like if they did like kind of push him and give him a run and actually treated him like the lethal weapon,
the badass that he is.
Yes, the badass that he is, people would have really got behind that.
I don't necessarily agree. I don't think he could have been in the main events, being the act that he was and how he was presented, obviously. But I think if they got him like a really good manager, like ideally like a Paul Heyman or something, and they actually presented him as this killer, dangerous killer, and just had him going through people, I think he could have definitely got a main event run out of him.
That's actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was thinking something really similar in that he's almost like a precursor to Brock Lesnar in that regard. Now, Steve Blackman, how to put this? He kind of lacks charisma, but that kind of makes his kind of character, right? It's like he kind of lacking charisma is actually his character.
No nonsense, yeah.
So exactly. So I do think, like you said, if they gave him someone to do the heavy lifting for him in that department and would round him out, and Paul Heyman is a great idea, then I feel like he could have gone somewhere. But then if you want to talk about when, well, Paul Heyman and him timeline-wise would never have crossed paths. So I'm talking about WWE.
No, well, Paul Heyman came into WWE WrestleMania 17, and I think Steve Blackman was on that show, right? Maybe not. But I'm not sure if he was gone by then, because he was at WrestleMania 2000. But I'm not sure. Maybe they missed each other. I might be wrong. I will say this: if Steve Blackman came around today, the company would take him and push him to the moon. I think if someone with that physique and had that much legitimate background, you know, WWE hired that Gable Stevenson guy, do you know what I mean, for example, and he doesn't look anything like Steve Blackman.
Right.
I think if they had him in this day and age, they would push him to the moon and probably do what I said, probably put him with Paul Heyman, have him kill people. Thing is, at the time, in the year 2000, just the main event scene was, you know, with Austin and Rock, it was just really hard for anyone else really to break that barrier. They said we had Ken Shamrock here, not main eventing. You know what I mean? So yeah, it is fun to think about what could have been different for Steve Blackman.
Yeah, and number 3, I've got Ken, because I mean, he's already done UFC and made a name for himself at this point, you know. And again, he looks and acts legitimate. And I think you made a
no.
Okay. I thought
I'm agreeing with you.
And yeah, I mean, he looks and acts legitimate. And I know I've got 2 people in a row where like my justification is they seem legit, like legit fighters. I think that really means something. And
I think so, yeah.
Because you have to, if we talk about a main event run, they not only have to be popular and the people want them, but also kind of credible. So you don't like lose the integrity of that championship or that main event run. And do you think Ken Shamrock could have fit the bill? Yeah, 100%. Look at him.
Well, it's funny. He did headline a In Your House. He wrestled Shawn Michaels for the WWF title. And I feel like that's the only time he did, at least in a singles match. He was super duper over at one point. Obviously, they had him win King of the Ring 1998. Ken wasn't the best at cutting promos, but I didn't think he was that bad. Like he was better than Steve Blackman, for example.
Right.
And I feel like he would have only got better in 1999 when they turned him heel and had him just as kind of fodder in the corporation. I feel like they kind of killed a lot of his momentum.
Trajectory. Yeah, it did.
With the boss man, it's kind of like, But I think if he stuck at it, they would have, especially when they were having guys like Angle and Benoit and those guys, Jericho come in. He could have worked with all of them. It could have been really different. But yeah, honestly, if he stuck with it, it would have been awesome to see him as world champion. You know how he looked in that first TNA show when he had the Wolverine sideburns and the black gear? I feel like if he brought that look to the WF, let's say he had that in like 2001, 2002, I think it could have been awesome. So yeah, another thing we'll never know, but it's fun to fantasize.
Oh yeah. My number 2, you'd probably think this person would be my number 1, but this is my number 2. Can you guess who it is?
Is it Goldust?
It's Goldust. It's Goldust, man. Jeez Louise. As for when he was like the height of his, I wouldn't say controversy, but because that's the point of the figure, but at the height of his, whatever you want to call it, like popularity or momentum first time round, I think they should have just pushed him just to kind of make
like 96.
As 96, 97, as like obnoxious as they could. I really feel like they should have ran with him, went like the whole hog.
Yeah.
I feel like they only went halfway with him.
Yeah. And honestly, they had him do some pretty big matches in I want to say 96. Like he wrestled The Undertaker on pay-per-view. They gave him a run as the Intercontinental Champion then, and he had a lot of heat. And maybe they would have gone the whole way with him. I don't know if they would have done actually, because back then they were just very, very selective on who they put the world title on. And back then it really was, they put the world title on someone and that was the person that was having to carry the company on their back. Do you know what I mean? So 96, it was kind of just like Brett and Shawn, sometimes sprinkling The Undertaker. So I'm not sure if they would have ever gone the full hog.
These marketable figureheads. Yeah, I get it.
Sure. But I think all the controversy, is eventually with Goldust, they had to end up telling him, I think by 97, they had to tone down the gimmick.
It down. Yeah.
Right. So then that kind of killed Goldust. So I feel like if that hadn't happened, then there could have been a chance that he could have gone all the way and won the world title. And I do think, 96, it would have been cool for him to do that. And maybe, him as a world champ working with guys like Shawn Michaels, that'd be a cool feud.
That would be, wouldn't it?
Or Bret Hart even, I think. I think that could have been really, really cool. But yeah, again, and that was probably the only time when he could have done it, really.
Possibly done it. I think so too. My number 1, you're going to love this. You're going to love this. I think this is our first unanimous top 5 where we've both agreed. I've got Brian Pillman.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I do.
Really?
Yeah. For
did
the
exact same. Yours?
So did I just, no, honestly, I got Brian Pillman because I was originally going to have Owen Hart. But so he won the IC belt. I remember that. And I was just thinking about it more and more. And I just thought, just like what you said, is if what happened didn't happen, we would have got it, and we're kind of robbed. And I know that's kind of selfish because obviously someone's died, he's got a family, and I'm saying, but what about me and my entertainment? But seriously, if he was still around, like you said, in the Attitude Era, he would have been just the perfect candidate for the era. I can't think of anyone better. Yeah. Honestly, for me, probably more than Stone Cold. I know that sounds nuts. Well, but I really think that he was insane.
The thing is, Owen Hart, I think we discussed it on the show before. I feel like the time for him to have been world champion was in 1994 when he did headline a few shows with Brett. And I feel like having him beat Brett for the world title, could have got him a lot of heat. And he was over at the time. I think Vince just thought, again, it was a bigger deal back then to win the world title. And he probably just thought Owen Hart probably wasn't big enough to carry the company, physically.
Physically, you mean? Yeah.
Yes. And there could have been, I know Owen Hart was a big ribber. Maybe he didn't think that was someone that should be a world champion back then. I don't know. But we've discussed this on the show, how after Brett left and he sort of did the Black Heart gimmick and he wore that pretty rotten leotard with the caution tape on it. And he was part of the Nation of Domination for a hot minute. He seemed pretty disheartened and everything else. And realistically, after that Montreal screw job, it should have skyrocketed Owen Hart, but it kind of did the opposite. I do like to think, though, had he stuck with it, because of course, as well, before he died, Vince Russo did know what to do with him. They were having him do this blue blazer gimmick. Yeah. I do like to think, had he stuck around, and in sort of 2000, 2001, and he had the chance
could have reinvented himself.
Yeah, reinvented himself and worked with, the Angles, the Jerichos, the Benoits, etc. And I think eventually they would have been like, okay, this guy's been with the company a long time. Let's give him his flowers and give him that main event run. So again, Owen's another one. I just think, oh man, it just sucks so much. Obviously it sucks anytime someone passes away, but when it's like in the height of their career, it's just, oh man, breaks your heart, huh?
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah, that was my top 5. Not as good as yours. Not bad good. Though. Yeah, there we go. Absolutely. I think we nailed it this week, buddy, with our top 5s overall. How about that? All right, so let's get back to the show. I was actually going to go to the next bit, but I just remembered there was a part in that IC match that I can't believe that you didn't bring up, because I feel like this thing would irk you to no end. There was a bit in it, and it really annoyed me, so it has to have annoyed you. So China superplexes Hardcore Holly, right? And as soon as they land, he rolls her up as if and gets a 2 count, as if he was the aggressor when he was the one taking a superplex. He was acting like he wasn't the one who took a devastating top rope maneuver.
It's actually it's a wrestling spot that I've seen a lot of times. I've actually done it before.
What's wrong with you, man?
Well, it's obviously the execution of it wasn't correct. The way you're supposed to do it is where you kind of take the suplex, you kind of bounce up, and you happen to kind of legs get hooked, and you happen to be on top of them.
Okay.
That's kind of the idea. It is a bit of a silly spot. Yeah. It takes a lot of talent to pull that spot off. But
okay.
We're there. Right. I like China, but not the best wrestler. But speaking of that, we got to get to this famous Rock promo.
Dude, yeah, another little memorable gem. This pay-per-view just keeps giving and giving. The Rock cuts a hilarious backstage promo stating as long as he can get past Crash Holly and Headbanger Mosh, he thinks he might stand a chance in the Royal Rumble. Obviously being facetious, being a piss taker, because he's, everyone's thinking that Big Show is the credible threat. Big Show gets brought up. The Rock gets angry. He then oddly tells the Big Show that he wipes a monkey's ass with what the Big Show thinks. And it's like, hey, The Rock, what are you doing wiping a monkey's ass?
He comes out, dude, it's pretty funny. Like during this, he tells Michael Cole, he says, "Oh, have a glass of shut up juice." And I thought, "Ooh, that's not very good."
No.
But no, do you know what I was thinking watching this Rock promo? Obviously, Rock is very topical right now. I assume he still is when you're listening to this podcast.
Right.
But The Rock, the reason why he became so popular was because of this like smack talking that he did back here, right?
Yes.
And The Rock, when he comes out and does promos in this day and age, or he has done for the last, let's say, 10 years, it's like a completely different Rock. Back here, he's still
so juvenile back here.
Right, but back here, he's still essentially a heel. Like he's doing heel promos, but he's a baby face and he's arrogant and he's kind of angry and he's talking smack. Now he comes out and he's all smiles and it's all like, oh, I've got goosebumps. It's so good to be here. I love you people. And it's a very different Rock. I guess now he's trying to be more, Dwayne Johnson than The Rock. But I prefer this smack talking Rock from 2000 and 99, 98 than.
Oh, for sure. Even if it doesn't Rock land. Yeah.
Right.
Like
he looks better now.
Like, yes.
He looks better now. But him mentioning Crash Holly and Headbanger Mosh was pretty entertaining. And people remember that pretty well.
Yeah. Very memorable, this promo. Hey, guess what we have next, Marty? We have a tag match that I completely forgot about, despite being on my so-called favorite pay-per-view. Mm-hmm. So this is another terrible New Age Outlaws tag team match on Chillin With The Villain. This happens a lot, apparently. Luckily, this is over basically just as soon as it starts, as Mr. Ass fame-asses Bradshaw and pins him in 2.5 minutes, which makes Acolytes look really weak. And I want to get to that. But, man, 590,000 people spent $40? I don't know how much a pay-per-view is.
I think, yeah.
To special buy some prime time, premium tier entertainment, wherein one of the characters is called Mr. Ass. Like, that is wrestling, dude. Like, if you think about it, isn't it? That people are paying all this money and there's a guy in it called Mr. Ass.
This is how you could explain wrestling at the time, right? So you have someone that won the Olympics for the great country of America. He did it for the country, you know,
broken neck.
Right, with a broken neck. He's very, you know, polite, blah, 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 whatever. American hero. What is he? A good guy or a bad guy? Oh, he's a good guy. No, he's a bad guy. Then you have another guy that is essentially a pimp and offers his hose to other talents and everything else. Like, what do you think he is? Good guy, bad guy? Well, clearly a bad guy. No, he's a good guy. You know what I mean? Like, that's just pro wrestling. You know?
It's fantastic.
It is. It is. What's funny about the Outlaws, I remember like during the time, I guess WWE tried to push this like, oh, the Outlaws are the greatest tag team of all time. And it's so funny, dude. When you go back to watch the Outlaws, first of all, their run was like super short. It was like less than a year, I want to say. And obviously they had other times when they came back and stuff. But typically the matches aren't very good at all.
No,
and
they're not, man.
They're not, right? And I think, honestly, the reason why people just look back at them so sort of fondly is because of DX and because of that Road Dogg entrance. What I thought was interesting here, that the Outlaws, this is January 2000, they are not, to me, the crowd sounded dead for them at this point. And the reason why, because like in 98, early 99, super duper over, but then they tried to like turn Billy Gunn heel and they had them feud, and then like, it was just like a bunch of bad booking, really. And then they just like put them back together. And here they're actually heels. They're with Triple H again after he turned on them. And I think all the kind of like booking, which didn't make sense, just made people not really care about them. And that's unfortunately what happened to X-Pac and why people say X-Pac heat. It's like, which means go away heat. It's like that should have never happened for X-Pac because he's an amazing wrestler. But people don't really talk about that. People look back at DX. They'll talk about how the NWO got booked terribly and they ruined it, whatever. But they don't talk about that with DX. And I actually think it's the same case for D-Generation X. It was towards the end, and it seemed like they're in their peak. It was just booked all over the place. And Triple H left, and then I don't know. But yeah, it's really surprising to see the Outlaws just not get a reaction here. People still like to sing their intro, but
of course,
the match, pretty much silence. You said you forgot this match was on the show.
I did.
I did as well. And I could just sense during this match, the crowd, they were ready now for the Rumble.
And
the world title match.
Maybe, yeah.
But they were over it. They wanted to move on.
Shall we?
We shall. I mean, I was just going to say real quick, we talked about midcarders that should have had a world title run, a main event run. They did try it with Billy Gunn, and it just did not work out whatsoever. And here he's wearing like see-through pink biker shorts, and you can see his thong underneath, which is a look, but I don't see that as a look of like a top guy in the company. So they tried with Billy, won the King of the Ring, did not work. So yeah, let's move on to the good stuff.
All right, and boy, is it good stuff. The reason why I love this pay-per-view so much comes a lot from the build up, like the video packages, like we said with the opening one for the street fight, because it just sells it so well. And we're treated to another one right now, the one that you talked about earlier, where we see Mankind tell Stephanie and Triple H that he thinks the McMahon Helmsley era kind of sucks and he gets fired. And we talked about this, I can't remember what episode, but how as a kid, this made me really upset. And I remember playing with my Mankind figure in the bath while really sad, thinking he was really fired. And that actually happened. Anyways, we see in this video package, we see The Rock leading a strike with the rest of the locker room unless Mankind is reinstated. The McMahon-Helmsley pair, they cave into the demands, but then they're out for Mankind. They're out to get him. So they have this street fight, but Mankind bows out of it, but says the fans deserve a substitute. And when he takes off his mask and shirt and to reveal Cactus Jack underneath, man, you alluded to it earlier, but it just gets you pumped, mate. It gets you so pumped. And then the music crescendos and just the editing ramps up and it's just rage-filled, and Triple H and Cactus Jack just pummel each other and have been pummeling each other all day, every day leading up to this point right now. Like I said, it's so simple and rage-filled, this package. It's marvelous stuff, man. I absolutely love this little video package. Love it.
It's been spoken about before, and this is why it kind of annoys me how a lot, maybe not so much now, but back in the day, a lot of people ragged on Triple H, and a lot of people didn't like Triple H. A lot of people said he only got his main event run because he was married to the boss's daughter. But Mick Foley takes off that mask and tie, and he's revealed he's wearing a Cactus Jack t-shirt. And Triple H sold it like he'd seen a ghost. He's so good. Yes. But all Foley had done is taken his mask off, right? Like, if Triple H just stood there and laughed or didn't sell it at all, the match wouldn't have been sold at all, right? It'd been nothing. But the way Triple H sold it made it seem like, the biggest thing ever, and like so, big and important for this match. So I just don't think Triple H gets enough credit whatsoever. Like, he did such a good job here. But yeah, I think this is obviously the match that everyone remembers. But Foley was so strong here as a character. Unfortunately, he wasn't as strong in the ring, but he did enough sort of smoke and mirrors. When I say that, I'm talking about the gimmicks in this match, whether it was the announcer's table, they used a barbed wire bat, they used thumbtacks, they fought out, on the ramp, but
handcuffs, wooden pallets,
steel chairs. But Triple H, he carried the load, if you ask me. Triple H was selling and flying all over the place for Mick Foley. He made Mick Foley look like $1 million. I'm going to give you a controversial opinion on this. I don't think this was actually as good as I remembered it. I felt like the first half of the match, the crowd was not really that into it, and they didn't really start getting into it until they started busting out all the big weapons, or maybe it wasn't until Triple H started bleeding everywhere. I feel like it's a little bit romanticized. I don't know. People talk about like it's the best Mick Foley match ever. And I watched Mick Foley and Shawn Michaels again the other day from one of the In Your Houses, Mind Games. And I feel like that was so much better than this. And I think it's because here with Foley, his injuries really had started to rack up. And obviously we know he's going to try to retire soon. I guess the reason why the match is so important is because it sort of cemented Triple H as a badass, and it gave Triple H that edge, that toughness that he needed. And it's funny because it seems like now Triple H, when he has his wrestlers, whether the heels or faces, he always wants them to be badasses because that's how he got over,
Right.
But no, overall, obviously very, very memorable match. The one thing that's pretty hard to watch is Mick Foley gives Triple H a snap suplex onto those pallets that were out there, and it just cuts the hell out of Triple H's calf, like put a big hole in his calf, and he's bleeding everywhere. It's pretty brutal, huh?
On the DVD, I watched this on Peacock for the review, but I have the DVD somewhere. On the DVD, you get like a bonus segment at the end that's showing Triple H getting stitches in his leg after the pallet goes through it, literally pierces in his legs. And it's like really bloody and it's really gruesome. And in fact, they give like a parental discretionary warning before you watch it. And the thing is, it's like that pallet spot happens basically right at the start of the match.
Yeah.
He had to carry on and deliver the match that he did, talk about Triple H, regardless, like of that massive hole in his ankle, like in his leg, calf. Like the thought of that, like the showing that he gave whilst being injured from the very get-go of it is just insane, dude. He should have got a raise for that match if he didn't.
He probably did. I mean, he had it when he tore his quad, didn't he, in that match with Jericho and Benoit, and he continued wrestling for another 10 minutes. Like, you've got to admire Triple H's desire and love for this business. So it's another reason why I get mad when people rag on Triple H. Like, he's a tough dude that loved this business. Do you know what I really did like about this match? What I really
did or didn't?
Did.
Okay, what?
So I think it was when we reviewed this year's Royal Rumble, and I said about, it's a 4-way. And because it's 4-way, now it means no disqualification. But what I didn't like about it was that people would still do things in front of the referees. And I said the referees should try and stop it. Do you know what I mean? Like, okay, you're not going to get disqualified for it, but it doesn't mean you can pull out a gun and shoot someone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Well, this match was actually a street fight. It is no disqualifications. That's the rules of the match. But the referee still tried to keep some order. So when Mick Foley got the barbed wire bat, I think it was Earl Hebner, he's trying to take the bat away from Foley. He tries to pull off Foley when he bites Triple H.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, so yeah, I'm not going to disqualify you, but it doesn't mean you can just do all this stuff.
Go around doing that.
Do you know what I mean?
I love it.
Which I really liked, and it made it seem like more dangerous than everything else. Like, honestly, I think another reason why this match is sort of people look back on it so fondly is the stuff they do in this match at the time wasn't commonplace, and it was the right context. You know, like I feel like Mick Foley is the only character in maybe all of wrestling, or at least in WWE, that could come out with thumbtacks or barbed wire bats. Whereas now you see like every, you know, wrestler do it, but it doesn't make sense for their gimmick. It made sense for Mick Foley because he was crazy and he enjoyed pain. That was his gimmick. So it made a lot of sense. Whereas now it'd just be like anyone, like, oh, I'm doing thumbtacks, like why? Or barbed wire. It doesn't really have the same effect.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And speaking of context, Cactus Jack, I hate it when people kick out of a finisher, and so do you. Cactus Jack kicking out of the pedigree in this match only, for me, is the only acceptable kick out for a finisher. It blew my mind when that happened. And they didn't overuse it. He didn't have to take 5 F5s.
No.
You know, he kicked out of one pedigree. Triple H was incredulous. He had to just do another. And like, that was it. It was so well done.
Well, what's funny about that is it was very well done. And I think that honestly made the match. That was when the crowd came up the most, for sure. Like, think about that. They did barbed wire. They did announcers tables. They did steel chair shots. They did thumbtacks. But the biggest pop was him kicking out of the pedigree, move, right? And that
just goes to show
were protected back then. It
right,
meant
and
something.
that just and they use that kick out as a tool.
Yes, and what's funny about it though is I don't believe they didn't plan for him to kick out of it. He wanted to take the pedigree on the thumbtacks. And Triple H didn't do it. He backdropped him on it, but then he pedigreed him like where there wasn't thumbtacks, but Foley wanted the thumbtacks. So he covers him. Triple H thinks it's the finish. 1, 2, Mick Foley kicks out. He's like, do it again on the tacks. So, but that actually made the match. So it would have been interesting to see how people looked back on the match had that first pedigree been the finish. I don't think it'd actually be as, you know,
it elevated it for sure. For me,
it really did. It did. But yeah, you're right. Like, this just shows you, like, if someone
power
out
of that when it's
a finisher once every 2 or 3 years, it would mean so much more as opposed to every single show.
Totally agree, man. I've got some notes I have, because this is like my favorite match of my favorite pay-per-view. So I just got to talk about this. So first thing I noticed, which is kind of funny, is people don't want Cactus Jack to win it's a championship match, win the championship so much as they just want Triple H dead, you know? So there's this part where the barbed wire bat, like you said, gets confiscated and they hide it under the Spanish announcer table's desk. Cactus Jack knocks out one of the defenseless commentators who's just doing his job.
Hugo Simonovich. He's always taking bumps. He used to be a wrestler back in the day. But Hugo, he's a great guy. And it's so fun watching these Attitude Era shows where he's just always getting beaten up.
Yeah, dude, it's so funny. But like the crowd go wild when this defenseless innocent man gets knocked out. It's like, that's your good guy? It's like they don't care. They're just like, give him back his stick.
Yeah.
Dude, it's so funny. JR says at one point, he goes, "This is not the way, Mick. Come on, Cactus. Triple H is bleeding like a horse." You know that famous phrase, bleeding like a horse? Another note I've got is this match is so hardcore that they don't even bother to take out the monitors from the announcer tables before they go through them. They just take the monitors. Dude, this match is just like got the raw physicality of this match for me is unmatched, dude. Like, it's just, it's the best. So the King says, Cactus Jack, said his children won't be allowed to watch this. And I thought, well, thank you, Barry, right? From Beyond the Mat for showing mankind the chair shots and how that affected your children from the last episode, right?
Maybe he learned his lesson.
He's learned his lesson, obviously. So that was great to see. Triple H gets a bag from Howard Finkel. It's got handcuffs in it. Howard Finkel, why are you just having handcuffs on you? That's kind of weird.
Maybe. Who knows what he's into when he gets up to
Who knows? Right. The Rock's interference, incidentally, he comes out just like in a video game, like when you get interference in No Mercy, just comes walking out, hits Clubber's Triple H with the chair, like, it's such a good moment. Like, it's just so nice to watch Triple H get tanked on the head. I know it's a chair shot, we shouldn't be saying it, but you know what I mean. In the story, in the narrative, I mean,
sure,
because he's about to do it to a Cactus Jack, our hero, defenseless, and he gets clobbered himself. Nice bit of payback. Amazing.
Well, it's funny because, well, first of all, it's funny that they had the handcuffs, very similar to Royal Rumble 99. And then The Rock's out there doing unprotected steel chair headshots, but it's not to Mick Foley this time. It's to Triple H.
Triple H.
He got a break. But people love this match and the retirement match for Triple H, which we're going to cover, but it wasn't so good. And they obviously had the Hell in a Cell match in between. I think people like that, but I really feel like this should have been Mick Foley's retirement match. It was in Madison Square Garden. And part of the Mick Foley story, there's lots of talks about stories these days with wrestling. But part of the story was he got into wrestling because he saw Jimmy Snuka jump off the cage in Madison Square Garden when he was a fan. So I think for him to have this sort of match, which everyone loved in, his hometown, New York at MSG, this probably would have been the perfect way for him to retire. Or if they had this match at Mania, I do actually think they should have just done The Rock and Triple H as the WrestleMania match. But yeah, this probably should have been his last match. Actually, what I found out the other day, which I don't know if you'll find interesting, but my pal Richie on Instagram, he made me aware of this, but I don't think you'll know this. But so do you remember Mick Foley did that hardcore match in 2004 Backlash with Randy Orton?
Mm-hmm.
So like 3 weeks after Mick Foley's hardcore match with Randy Orton, he did a match in Japan for Hustle where he wrestled Kawada.
What?
And yes, and I believe it's for the Triple Crown, but it's so bizarre the fact that like I had no idea about this match. And you thought after that match with Randy Orton that Foley was just done again, but no, like 3 weeks later,
he's just in Japan.
3 weeks
same
later,
old stuff.
Yeah, 3 weeks later, he's doing a match in Japan against legendary Kawada. Apparently, this Hustle show, it was supposed to be Goldberg, but for some reason, Goldberg pulled out and they offered Mick Foley a whole bunch of money. So I guess he took it and he has this match with Kawada and the match isn't good. Kawada didn't really want to work with Foley, it seems. And I don't know if Foley was in particularly great shape at the time. But yeah, I was watching this match. I was like, whoa, I just never knew this sort of thing happened or this match happened. It's just so much fun that's what I love about the podcast. Now I constantly get people messaging me telling me wrestling trivia, like we should cover this on the podcast. I'm like, hell yeah, I didn't even know this stuff. And I thought I knew it. Oh, well, I didn't think that, but yeah, that was super duper cool. But I was cool with Mick Foley coming back for matches like the match with Orton or like the match with Edge. Not so much his TNA run, but this for me, this should have been his first retirement match, in my opinion.
This for me is a 5-star match. This is one of my favorite matches of all time. We should mention how we think it's over. Triple H is getting stretchered out, and then Cactus Jack stretches him back in and beats him up even more. And he's already covered in blood in front of his wife, Stephanie, much to her dismay, which was a great bit. She's very underrated as a bad guy. So is Triple H. And the final thing I just want to mention is when there's thumbtacks all over the ring and Triple H gets the cover, oh Hebner slams his hands down to do the 1, 2, 3, just like right in the thumbtacks as if they're not there. What a professional!
Yeah, you could tell he took a second to look at it and be like, oh God, like trying to find a spot where there was no tacks.
but still. Okay. Amazing match. Now it's time for the Royal Rumble, which is the main event. Another wonderful little gem, wonderful little moment I always remember from this pay-per-view is there's this long shot of Howard Finkel in the ring announcing the next match, which is the Royal Rumble, while the ring crew are busy like scrubbing the blood and thumbtacks off of the apron while getting ready, which is pretty cool.
So obviously when they have a match like this, obviously the guys go out there and clean it up, but they never really show that. Do you know what I mean? They don't show that on pay-per-view. They'll do that whilst they're showing like a video package or maybe they've gone to the commentators, whatever it is. Here, they decided to show the crew cleaning up the ring and there's blood everywhere on the ring. And I think it was to get over sort of how devastating this match was. So I thought that was actually a really cool and unique touch. I thought that was
I really enjoyed it. And
they're smart. Just saying, WWE's just smart like that. I feel like other companies would just rush for it. Here, they're still selling like, you know, how dangerous and violent this match was. And I just thought that was really, really clever.
Yeah. And it also lends to the whole kind of intimacy of the arena thing we talked about earlier.
That's
just all of it just works. Yeah. So they decide for no reason at all to show HBK only having one foot touch the ground in 1995 Royal Rumble. For no reason at all, Marty. That's not going to come up again. The Royal Rumble itself, it starts off with D'Lo Brown and Grandmaster Sexay. Now, Kai and Tai run in despite not being official entrants in the Rumble. So we're immediately getting the Royal Rumble stuff that we like the random shenanigans. There's cameos. So I'm just going to list off a few of these. So we've got the random element. Kai and Tai keep running in. This will actually pervade for the first half of the match. After that, Rikishi comes in. He no-sells a leg drop from D'Lo Brown, which I'm not too sure about. That kind of upset me, especially as he only weighs as much as Crash Holly. Do you like what I did there? Rikishi throws everybody out except for Grandmaster Sexay, and they're having like a stare down. And then the next countdown begins. And of course, who comes to the ring? It's Scotty 2 Hotty, right? So then they start doing their dance and getting the music in the middle of the Royal Rumble. And the crowd just eat it up. Like everyone gets on their feet. They absolutely love that bit, man.
This was the highlight of this Rumble match, without doubt. Without doubt, the highlight. And it's pretty ludicrous that, like, it doesn't really make any sense that they would just start playing music for them and doing the lights in a match, you know?
No sense.
Right.
It's so good.
It made no sense, but also made all the sense in the world as well.
Only makes sense in the world of professional wrestling.
Exactly. And
which is why we watch it.
Yes. And I was a kid at the time, and I loved this whole Too Cool dance and Rikishi. So I hope I'm not treading on your toes, but they do the dance, and before the dance is finished, Rikishi double clotheslines Too Cool, then he throws him over the top rope. And I remember being really disappointed at the time that happened. And it took me I thought that they'd like fallen out. I didn't really understand that, like, oh, it's every man for himself. Because in my head, I was like, I get it's every man for himself. But I thought, if your teammates are in there, wouldn't you work together and get rid of everyone first? Then you can do, when you're the final three, every man for himself and fight each other. So this kind of went over my head as a kid. I was like upset that Rikishi had done it, but it was a really, really unique spot. I feel like they needed more stuff like this. Maybe not more dances, but in this Rumble, it's funny because those first two guys come out, D'Lo, who normally used to get a pretty good reaction, and Grandmaster Sexay, and they start wrestling, and the people just do not give a crap because it just sat through that crazy street fight, and they just do not care whatsoever. When Rikishi came out, I felt like it picked up. It did, yes.
Yeah. And it definitely crescendoed with dance, which was early on into the match. So I understand that. But there is a lot of these little Royal Rumble moments. So I'm in defense of this Royal Rumble match, by the way. It sounds like you're not too sure. But by the way, they did clearly, Rikishi and Too Cool, they did clearly like bump fists or whatever, make up. And then Rikishi finishes off the dance by himself.
That helps it. That helps
so funny, dude.
So they the other thing I remember from this actual Rumble match is the Too Cool dance. And for some reason, what was Headbanger Mosh wearing for this Rumble?
The cones.
Like some cone bra thing. That to me just screamed like, oh, I'm trying to stand out. Like I'm trying to be different. Like that did not work for me. And at the time, I don't remember the Headbangers hadn't been on TV for a while. I think Thrasher was injured even, but I was like, oh, the Headbangers. And I was like, what is he doing now? Like, why has he got these big titties? It's weird. And of course that gives Jerry Lawler an excuse to keep talking about Mae Young, which was just like, ugh. The things that were nice, they did the dance, they got rid of Too Cool, so it's Rikishi on his own. And then I want to say Viscera comes out.
And that's
Viscera. Like, that was cool. Like a stare down, and like they always sell Big Show, like, oh, he's so hard to get out the Rumble, but they don't really sell Viscera. He's another one that like it's a shame it couldn't put it together because he looks so impressive. And they did try to push him in 95. He won the King of the Ring. It was Mabel. And then he had a world title match with Diesel, but he hurt him and people thought he was dangerous. You see him here, 2000, but maybe never someone being so big and weigh so much, but be so down the card. Like Viscera was like a Sunday night jobber, right? And I was looking at him, I was thinking, it's pretty hilarious how Viscera's ring gear, he wrestles in a coat, essentially.
It's like a trash bag.
It's a big, it looks like a trash bag, but he's wrestling in a coat. Like, imagine that. Like, what's your wrestling attire? Leotard, trunks, tights? No, wear a coat. Very odd. But
it is very odd.
That was nice with Rikishi and Viscera. Rikishi was, and Tuchel, super duper over here. The Big Boss Man also comes at one point, and I don't think I'd ever noticed this until watching this. He has a Confederate flag tattooed on his arm. I don't know if you know.
I didn't notice. No,
you can't really see it, and it makes sense because at first I was like, "Is that a Confederate flag?" But then when he was the original Big Boss Man with the blue police shirts, he used to have a Confederate flag on the sleeve. So
gotcha.
I guess that kind of makes sense. You talked about Kind Tight keep coming in. Actually, that's one of the.
Dude, we'll get to that. I've got notes on that, bro.
When there's no waste time, like the Kind Tight kept coming out because they weren't involved in the Rumble. They weren't booked for it, so they keep trying to interfere.
Yeah.
And I want to say, like the second or third time, Gangrel
throws Taka,
and he like 450s over the top rope, lands straight on his face. And dude, absolutely like brutal, vicious. It's funny. I used to tour quite a lot with Taka in Japan, and I would play this on my phone quite often and show it to him. He thought it was funny. But what I didn't remember is Jerry Lawler. He keeps asking for this to be replayed, and he keeps saying, "Hey, let's show the Chinese guy getting hurt again." Keeps referring to Taka as Chinese, but obviously he's Japanese. I was just a bit like, dude, this is pretty tasteless, right?
So I remember all of that vividly. Him keep wanting to see the replay and what he says. So Funaki runs in by himself after Taka's obviously injured, and King says the reason why they keep running in is because they don't understand the rules because they are Chinese.
Oh, man.
And by the way, incidentally, Kaientai wear the Japanese flag on their outfit. So it's like
he's doing it on purpose.
Excuse. Right, yeah.
He knows the Japanese.
Yeah. And then Funaki runs in again. King announces him as Funaki, the little Chinese guy. Then demands to see the replay of Taka hitting his head on the outside again. And this part I did remember. Then says that he needs to go to a Chinese hospital. Yeah. So that guy, what was his name? That Bubba Ray mentioned?
Oh, John Rocker.
Yeah, maybe John Rocker with his complaints can help King find the Chinese hospital in Times Square, right?
So
it was crazy that they were just saying that.
I'm surprised actually that they've still kept that kind of stuff in on the network.
In it, I know, and they subtitle it, so they added in. Yep.
I felt like a lot of the Rumble, like the crowd would die down. Like there were so many points. It's weird. Like this is clearly they were still trying to work out how to do the Royal Rumbles because you watch the Royal Rumble now and wrestlers come in and they have like a flurry. They have like a comeback. They'll come in, clothesline, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
This Rumble, for whatever reason, everyone that ran in, they'd run in and then get, straight into getting beaten up and just like put in the corner and like choking in the corner or like lifting a leg up over the ropes. Like everyone came in and did nothing. It was really bizarre. And even when the big hitters came in, like when Rikishi came in, I think he eliminated like one person. And like later Kane comes in like, oh, it's going to pick up, eliminates one person that goes straight to the corner. But there was a lot of people who didn't get reactions. But what I found interesting is Tazz came out to a massive pop.
Massive pop, man.
That's why I kind of wanted to mention him earlier for my top 5. When they did this whole thing where he was going to marry Steph, he was freaking over, man. Like SummerSlam 99, he was freaking over. And for whatever reason, it felt like they gave his push to Triple H, right? It seemed like they had all the intentions to push Tazz, and like clearly, why not? I'm sure Vince loved him. I'm guessing they just didn't think he was great at cutting promos. And I don't know. I know Tazz ended up having a lot of, problems with substance abuse. I don't know if it would have started here, but, and again, it was just 2000, just a hard to try and crack, Austin and Rock and everyone else. Obviously not easy. But Tazz came out to a huge reaction. Yeah. Christian comes out to like no reaction.
No reaction.
but Edge come out to a big pop, right? So I thought that was interesting, and it always makes me like one of my favorite wrestlers, I guess, when I was younger, and I guess still to a degree now, is the British Bulldog. But Bulldog in the jeans, Bulldog or Bulldog in jeans in 99, 2000 just did not work hard.
No, and the short hair. Yeah, I mean, it was good to see Bulldog and Gangrel, but yeah, like I wasn't a fan of that kind of iteration of Bulldog. But I was looking at him and I was thinking, even though he clearly works out and has got a good physique, he's just one of those people where he just has muscles. He's just massive, you know?
Dude, have you not seen Young David?
No.
Okay, so Davey Boy Smith, British Bulldog, started wrestling.
Let me Google.
Started his career in England. If you go on YouTube and type in Young David, let's say Young David versus, I don't know, Jim Breaks, for example. He started his career in England. He was very young when he was wrestling on TV, 17 or 18 or something. And he's like super duper duper skinny, like really skinny. Then I think
oh my God.
He wasn't naturally, I don't think. Well,
I take it all back.
yeah. It looks like a different person, huh?
Jeez. He looks like Bob Dylan.
Yeah, Young David, he was very skinny.
Well, I'm wrong on that. Yeah, absolutely wrong. Like, he worked at it. Jeez.
You know what I thought was really funny in this Rumble? So as a surprise entrant, Bob Backlund comes out, right?
Yes.
And he was looking pasty. But first of all, he did get a big pop. Obviously,
yes, he did.
New York, right? And what's crazy to think about this, I remember watching this and thinking, oh my, like Bob Backlund is so old and what an old timer. 5.5 years before this, in 1994, he'd been the world champion. This was only 5.5 years later, which is just insane to think about.
Yeah.
And his heyday was like, let's say it was like 20 years before this, right? So at the time, that seemed like just ancient ago. But now it's the equivalent of like The Rock or Brock Lesnar coming back now, which seems normal, right? But here it's like, what? This is
who's
crazy.
This old man? Yeah, that was crazy.
Right?
But do you know what? In defense of this Royal Rumble again, we love a cameo or legacy entrant. So Bob Backlund checks the list. It was wonderful. He gets eliminated, and then for some reason, there's just like a shot of him later just walking up the crowd gantry for absolutely no reason. Like he didn't leave through the entrance. He just leaves through the crowd, walks all the way up the stairs.
Bob
and out. He's so funny.
If you've ever met Bob Backlund, which I have a few times, he's quite the character. Yes, he's
so funny. So funny, man.
I tell you one, I did not really, well, I guess I did remember it somewhat, but Al Snow, he comes out and you think, oh, might pick up Al Snow. Here, he has obviously changed his character. He doesn't have head. He doesn't have help me on his forehead. And he's just wearing a black singlet. I was just like,
it looks like a woman's like plunge dress.
Right.
You know, like a black dress. Yeah, it was weird.
And I thought like, what look was he going for here? Because whatever it was, it just wasn't work. I will say this, that this Rumble to me, I felt like it dragged. I felt like the first half wasn't so bad. I thought the second half was really dragging. I just was not into it at all. It felt like everyone that came in didn't do anything. Like I said, even when Big Show came in, I was like, oh, it's about to pick up now. He eliminates one person, then he's just like doing nothing like everyone else. You spoke about Kind Tai coming in. So for both the Acolytes entrance, our boys, the Mean Street Posse, come in and they try to attack both Bradshaw and Farouk. And I don't know if you noticed this, because if you blink, you'll miss it. But when the Mean Street Posse came out the second time to attack Bradshaw, I believe, Pete Gas somehow forgets how to get in the ring, and he just runs. He tries to slide under the ring and just necks himself on the bottom rope and really messes himself up. And then he's so messed up, but he has to get in the ring to do this spot with Bradshaw. So he manages to climb in the ring, but he's like, he can't move. He's like looking down, like selling, like, oh. And then Bradshaw just starts beating him up. Like, I can't imagine what an awful feeling that must feel to like knock yourself out trying to get in the ring. And then you've got to do a spot with Bradshaw of all people. And then clearly, because he's all messed up, Bradshaw goes to throw him over the top rope and he gets his arm caught in the ropes as well. Like, it just was not a good day for Pete Gas whatsoever in this Royal Rumble. The worst thing was he botches getting in the ring and no one even saw it. Like, you see it like in a distance. It's a wide shot. But I was like, hang on, what happened to Pete Gas? Because I didn't know. I had to rewind it because he was stood there selling in the ring. I'm like, what's he selling? What happened? All he's done is climb in the ring. didn't realize he necked himself climbing in the ring. Like, those guys weren't wrestlers, and it's kind of, it shows.
I love them so much, man. They're so funny.
That was
oh man, no, I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch that.
You should
it's
watch
amazing.
it, yeah.
Absolutely amazing. Yeah. So I actually like the second half of it as well. Now it's because they did try. I understand what you were saying, and you're right. It's just people in corners just tapping away. They did try and punctuate it with things like Main Street Posse running in and certain like little aspects. Obviously, and of course, Road Dogg employs a legendary Royal Rumble strategy that I also think this match is famous for, where he's just in the bottom right of the frame throughout most of the match, just clinging to the bottom rope with his hands and legs like a two-toed sloth. That's a funny bit, but obviously, if your criticism is what it was about everyone's just like in the corners doing nothing, he's literally, he doesn't really stand out if everyone's doing it, but I did really enjoy that part, and I do think it's kind of a famous part. Obviously, The Rock comes out, Big Show a little while after. This is weird. Mr. Ass eliminates Road Dogg, which is fine. Finally, Road Dogg gets out.
But that doesn't make any sense, because Road Dogg had been holding on to the rope for the whole match, and then
just like gets up to walk to the rope, because I think it was some like Gangrel gets thrown out.
Yeah, someone got eliminated, and Road Dogg gets up, stands over the rope, like bent over the rope to laugh,
to point at him and laugh, like Nelson from The Simpsons.
And then gets thrown out. I was like, dude, what the hell?
So
stupid.
As much as I like the part with his strategy, they completely undermined it with that. So they just erased all of that goodwill they had with that funny bit. So yes, you're right. But anyways, Kane eliminates Mr. Ass. So the final four are Kane, Big Show, X-Pac, and The Rock. So that's a good final four.
Yeah.
The Rock eliminates X-Pac. And by the way, X-Pac's like trajectory up. Like it's pretty mental, dude. Lands straight on his back. Like
insane.
Bang. Crazy. Yep. And then X-Pac just gets straight back in, eliminates Kane despite not being legal, but that's fine. That's wrong.
But the referee didn't see him get eliminated.
I didn't get eliminated either. Fair enough. Yeah. No, but it's still... We saw this in 2002. It doesn't matter. If you get eliminated by someone who's not legal, you're still eliminated.
No. But what I'm saying is X-Pac got eliminated.
I know.
And the referee didn't see it, so he snuck back in. Like, that's how Austin won the Rumble in 1997. Yeah. It's kind of funny. I think it's kind of a cool spot.
It's cool. I don't have a problem with it. Big Show eliminates X-Pac again anyway, so he's literally out that time. So The Rock and the Big Show just left, which is fine. We knew it was going to happen. It wasn't going to be Crash Holly or Headbanger Mosh. Rock and Big Show both go over the top ropes. But hark, give ear. Remember, Marty, the HBK clip that they played for absolutely no reason. It completely coincidentally happened again. The Rock's feet, allegedly, didn't touch the floor, and The Rock is the victor. Now, I think that this would have worked perfectly fine as an ending if they didn't patronize the viewer beforehand with the HBK thing. Like, we get it. Like, we don't need it undermine that as well. What's your thoughts on that? It seems so forced to give you the final what happened in the Royal Rumble beforehand by reminding you that this can possibly happen.
So I had quite a handful of issues with this Rumble. First of all, what is Big Show's look here in 2000?
I know.
Dude, when he was the Giant in WCW, he looked cool as hell. Here, he's wearing like some like cheap biker shorts and like a t-shirt. He's a giant, like, and he's wearing no knee pads. He does not look good and his hair is like a mess. I don't know what Big Show was doing at this period. It's like, I'm sure WWE paid him a lot of money to come in from WCW, where he looked like a badass. And here, Big Show just looks like a mess.
I feel like he's always had an identity crisis in the WWE.
Maybe, yeah. He should just always look like he did in WCW, the Giant.
Would have been fine.
I think that's a way better name as well, the Giant, but that's a whole another conversation for another day. My big problem with this Rumble, so with The Rock, you said about telegraphing stuff. The Rock in his promo before the match, he guaranteed that he was going to win, which I feel like, you know, the rule is babyfaces shouldn't lie or never lie, right? And it felt like when The Rock guaranteed he was going to win, pretty much knew he was going to win. But there was only two people in this Rumble, it felt like, who could have won it. That was both Big Show and The Rock. And really, there's only one person that could have won it, and that was The Rock, it felt like. So that, to me, you know, it felt like there was them two in it. They also had Kane, but he wasn't really being presented at the time as a main eventer. And the rest was all mid-carders. So I thought that was an issue. What's funny is I think when The Rock eliminated the Big Show, only one of his feet was supposed to hit the floor. But in reality, they don't show it here, but both his feet actually hit the floor, which they then use later for Big Show to have a gripe. And he shows the replays on Raw and everything else, which is pretty funny. I think like, I want to say in like 2016 or something, they on Raw, both the Big Show and The Rock were there and they had an interaction and The Rock makes a joke about it. Like, yeah, like you should have won the Royal Rumble 2000. Like I screwed you or something. So yeah, to me, I felt like the Rumble was kind of a letdown. It just, yeah, too much stalling and it's not enough happening. Too many mid-carders and there was just no point where you thought anyone else could have won other than The Rock.
Yeah. Overall, though, I really did enjoy this Royal Rumble. And obviously I can tell you didn't as much as I did. And I understand, you know, why you're saying those things. I believe it does have a lot, these Royal Rumble moments, these kind of like the recipe of what the ingredients that what a Royal Rumble needs that we say they need. I feel like it had the cameo, you know, like the legacy, it had shenanigans, it had silly strategies, it had like two people facing off for a little bit. That was Viscera and Rikishi this time around. Nice little singles bit, good ending. It had many of them, but none of them were as impactful as the few that were in 2002's Royal Rumble. So like Maven and the Hurricane bit with the two main eventers. So it's just like, so for me, as much as I like this, I would put this below 2002 in the leaderboard. I still think 2002 had a better Royal Rumble. Where would you put it though? So for me, it's second favorite so far. Below
the actual Royal Rumble match?
The Royal Rumble. The Royal Rumble.
I wasn't really a fan of this at all.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. But Royal Rumble 98, they did the world title match after the Rumble, which I always thought was weird. And I always thought that you should end the show with the Rumble. Yeah. This pay-per-view, I actually think they should have ended with the world title
Street Fight
match. I don't know, it would have been the ending the show with the heel going over, but they could have had The Rock win the Rumble before it, and then when Triple H wins, they could have The Rock come out and do like a stare down for everything else for, you know, to set up their WrestleMania match, which ends up being a four-way, which we're going to get to in the story.
We will eventually.
No, but no, overall, obviously, this whole entire show, just super duper nostalgic. I taped it on Channel 4, so I watched the hell out of this show when I was young. If I had to say a favorite match, I mean, it's going to have to be obviously the Street Fight, but it is close with the tables match for me.
Yeah. For me, it's the Street Fight, obviously, hands down. For me, it's a 5-star match.
What do you think is the worst match?
New Age Outlaws, if we're not including the swimsuit competition.
Yeah, that wasn't a match. Yeah. Definitely.
New Age Outlaws, it's my favorite pay-per-view, man. And like, I forgot this was on. That's so embarrassing. Not for me. Like for them. Yeah.
What overall star rating for the show?
Okay.
Because the yours is kind of obvious. I guess mine would be more the interesting one.
For a wrestling pay-per-view, I'm going to give it 4 out of 5. Okay. It had two absolutely amazing matches. And I still really enjoyed the Royal Rumble. And I loved Tazz's debut match. The swimsuit thing and the New Age Outlaws kind of let it down. And honestly, the triple threat thing didn't light the world on fire. Yeah. So but everything else just like way kind of compensated for that for me. So 4 out of 5. As a wrestling pay-per-view, as a piece of entertainment, like I want to like video games, movies, like what do I want to put on to entertain myself? This is a 5-star. Like this is a 5-star piece of entertainment.
Didn't they make a Royal Rumble? Didn't they make a Royal Rumble 2000 game?
They made a Royal Rumble game in 2000, yeah. On the
okay, there we go. Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, yeah. But I think it used like the logo and stuff from this.
I think it may have done. I can't remember.
You're the game guy. You should know this.
Yes. It has like a gold Royal Rumble icon, and this one wasn't gold. It was black and red, so I'm kind of confused. But anyways. But yeah. What about you?
So you said you only gave it 4 stars.
I'm going to give it, as a pay-per-view, 4. Yep,
so
4.
So I was thinking 3.5, but 3.5 doesn't sound that high, but it is actually high. Do you know what I mean? When I say 3.5,
like 7 out of 10, 70%.
Like,
I think
if you see a restaurant and it's got 3.5 rating, that should be a good restaurant, but typically it isn't. Like that would be a bad rating. So maybe I'll give it maybe a can I do like I'm like literally right in between 3.8, sorry, 3.5.
Wow, this is getting very specific, dude.
I'm in between 3.5 and 3 and 4. And I don't know why it's taken me so long to work this out, that I'm giving it a 3.7.5.
7.5, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I think that's pretty fair. Yeah, that's exactly what
Awesome.
I was thinking. Yeah. But no, it was a lot of fun to go back and watch. And
super fun to go back to the 2000s, isn't it?
It is, and I'm actually really looking forward to doing No Way Out 2000 next week, because that's obviously a lot less memorable than this or WrestleMania 2000.
I haven't seen it.
You haven't even seen it.
I haven't even seen No Way Out. No,
I probably haven't seen it in 20 years or so, or maybe longer. Maybe even since it happened. I mean, I feel like I've seen the Hell in a Cell match that Foley has with Triple H a few times, but the whole show, yeah, I can't even really think off the top of my head what else is on that show. So I'm really looking forward to next week's show. So make sure you listen, guys, on our Mick Foley retirement tour story arc. So if you enjoyed the show today and you want to support the podcast, please leave us that review that we asked for before. And of course, please follow us on the social media at The Villain Pod. We're en route to getting our first 10,000 followers on Instagram. So if you gave us a follow on there, if you gave us a subscribe on YouTube, that would be nice as well. But I guess that's all from me. I'll put it over to you, Sam.
Yep. I want to hear feedback generally. I always do. This time around, especially because it's my favorite pay-per-view of all time. If you've got any memories of this, do you remember the little bits as much as I do? If so, mail@thevillainpod.com, MAIL. Please email us or just DM us on the socials. I want to hear your thoughts or your memories of this pay-per-view, because it's very dear to me. So I'd love to, even if you hated it, I'm just really curious. Like, did you watch it at the time? Did you get it? Did you get a friend's like VHS bootleg version? Did everybody have it on DVD, or am I just making that up? You know, I'm just really curious about this, because it has a special spot in my heart, this pay-per-view. So any information, any stories, any anecdotes you have, send them our way. If they're really cool and you're okay with that, we'll read them out on the pod. But yeah, mail@thevillainpod.com, or just DM us on the socials at The Villain Pod. But apart from that, I've got nothing else to say. I'm going to go back now and watch that Pete Gas bit, man.
Yes, you should.
I can't believe I missed it. It sounds so funny. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Thanks a lot, man. And everybody at home, have a good week. Till next week.